The glass bottle caught the afternoon sunlight like a diamond nestled between two smooth river stones, and Xander Cross nearly missed it as his boots splashed through the shallow creek bed on his way back to his horse. He had been tracking a lost calf for the better part of 3 hours, and the October heat of 1882 still bore down on the New Mexico territory with an intensity that made sweat pool beneath his hat brim. Pyramid City lay 5 miles to the east, a growing settlement that had sprung up where the railroad met the cattle trails, and Xander had called it home for the past 2 years since leaving his family's failing farm in Missouri. The bottle was corked tight, and inside he could see a rolled piece of paper. Curiosity got the better of his exhaustion, and he pulled it free, working the cork loose with his calloused fingers. The paper was good quality, not the rough stuff sold at the general store, and the handwriting was elegant, clearly educated. To whoever finds this, the letter began. I am writing these words in desperation, hoping that someone, anyone, might read them and understand. My name is Sarah Michaels, and I am alone in a way I never imagined possible. Not alone in body, for I am surrounded by people every day, but alone in spirit, in heart, in the deepest parts of myself that long for connection. I work as a schoolteacher in Pyramid City, brought here 6 months ago from Boston to educate the children of miners and ranchers. I thought I would find purpose here, and I have in many ways, but the loneliness cuts deeper than any knife. Every morning I walk to the schoolhouse past the creek, and every evening I walk back, and I wonder if there is anyone in this vast territory who might understand what it means to feel invisible even while being seen. If you find this letter, know that somewhere, a woman who longs to be known wrote these words. Perhaps that is enough. Perhaps just the act of writing them and sending them into the world will ease this ache, or perhaps you will read this and think me foolish. Either way, I had to try. Sarah Michaels. Xander read the letter 3 times, standing there in the creek with water soaking through his boots. The raw honesty of it struck something deep in his chest. He knew that kind of loneliness. Since coming to Pyramid City, he had worked the Morrison Ranch, saved his wages, kept to himself. He had acquaintances but no real friends, no one who knew the parts of him that mattered. Sarah Michaels, the school teacher. He knew who she was, had seen her walking through town in her practical dresses, her dark hair always pinned up neatly, her face serious and composed. He had never spoken to her, had no reason to, but now he held her secret loneliness in his hands. The sun was lowering toward the horizon as he rode back to the Morrison Ranch, the letter tucked carefully in his vest pocket. His mind churned with thoughts of what to do. Should he seek her out? Would that be welcome, or would it mortify her to know someone had found her private words? The vulnerability in that letter deserved respect, not casual intrusion. That night in the bunkhouse, he lay on his cot while the other ranch hands played cards and told stories, and he thought about Sarah Michaels walking past that creek every day, releasing her loneliness into the water like a prayer. By morning, he had made his decision. He would write back. Finding paper proved harder than he expected. The ranch kept ledgers and work records, but personal stationery was scarce. Finally, he rode into Pyramid City on his day off and purchased paper and an envelope from the general store, ignoring the curious look from Mrs. Henderson behind the counter. He sat in his room above the stable, where he had moved after saving enough to afford private quarters, and tried to find the right words. "Dear Miss Michaels," he wrote, then crossed it out. "To the woman by the creek." No, that sounded strange. He started again. "I found your letter 3 days ago in the creek east of town. I want you to know that I do not think you foolish. I think you brave. It takes courage to speak the truth of loneliness, to admit to the ache of being unseen. I understand it more than you might imagine. My name is Xander Cross, and I work at the Morrison Ranch. I came to New Mexico from Missouri 2 years ago, leaving behind a family farm that could no longer sustain us, leaving behind a life that had been decided for me before I was old enough to choose. Here I thought I would find freedom, and in some ways I have, but freedom can be its own kind of lonely. You wrote that you wonder if anyone might understand what it means to feel invisible while being seen. I do understand. Every day I work alongside men who know my face but not my thoughts, who share meals but not dreams, who are companions without being friends. I do not write this to make you uncomfortable or to intrude upon your privacy. I write because your words deserved an answer. Because loneliness met with silence is twice as heavy. If you would like to write again, I will check the creek each Sunday after dawn. If you would prefer I forget I ever found your letter, I will respect that wish and trouble you no more. Either way, know that your words reached someone who heard them truly. Xander Cross. He folded the letter carefully, sealed it in an envelope, and rode out to the creek in the early morning hours of Saturday. The same spot where he had found her bottle held his response now, tucked into a different bottle he had purchased for the purpose, wedged between the same two stones. Sunday morning he woke before sunrise, his stomach tight with anticipation. Would she have found it? Would she respond? He rode to the creek as the first light painted the sky pink and gold, and his heart jumped when he saw the bottle was gone. In its place was another, and inside, a letter in that same elegant hand. "Mr. Cross," she wrote, "I cannot fully express what it meant to find your letter yesterday morning. I had walked to the creek hardly daring to hope, telling myself I was foolish for even looking, and yet there it was. You say I was brave to write my truth, but you were braver still to answer it. Most people, I think, would have read my words and felt embarrassed for me, would have discarded the letter and forgotten it. That you took the time to respond with such honesty and kindness speaks to a character I rarely encounter. You asked if I wished to write again. I do, very much. But I confess I am uncertain how to proceed. What does one write to a stranger who somehow does not feel like a stranger at all? Perhaps I might start by telling you something true. I came to Pyramid City because Boston felt like a cage made of expectations. My father is a banker, my mother a woman of society, and they had plans for me that involved a suitable marriage to a suitable man in a suitable house. Teaching was my rebellion, small as it was, and coming west was my declaration of independence. Yet here I am, free in ways my mother would find horrifying, and still I ache with a loneliness I could never have predicted. The children I teach bring me joy, truly they do. They are earnest and curious and full of life. But at the end of each day, I return to my small room behind the boarding house, and the silence feels vast. I wonder what you think about when you are alone. I wonder what dreams you carried with you from Missouri. I wonder if you look at these wide skies and feel the same strange mixture of possibility and solitude that I feel. Perhaps we might continue this correspondence. Perhaps in writing to each other, we might both feel a little less invisible. Yours sincerely, Sarah Michaels. Xander read her letter sitting on a flat rock by the creek, and something in his chest expanded, something that had been compressed for so long he had forgotten it was there. Hope, maybe. Connection. He wrote back that same day, telling her about Missouri, about the farm that had been in his family for 3 generations before the debts became too much, about his father's quiet despair and his mother's tight-lipped courage, about his younger sister who married a shopkeeper in St. Louis and seemed content with her small, safe life. He told her about coming west with nothing but a horse, a saddle, and $30, about the freedom and terror of choosing his own path, about learning to work cattle and mend fences and survive on his own terms. She wrote back about Boston, about endless tea parties and rigid social rules, about her love of books and learning that had always set her apart from other young women of her class. About the day she saw a notice seeking a schoolteacher for a growing town in New Mexico territory, and knew with absolute certainty that she had to apply. The letters continued through October and into November. Each Sunday morning, Xander rode to the creek to collect her newest letter and leave his own. Each Saturday evening, Sarah walked to the creek and did the same. The words between them grew deeper, more honest, more intimate in ways that had nothing to do with physical touch and everything to do with true knowing. She told him about her fears, that she would never be understood, that she had made a terrible mistake in coming west, that the loneliness would swallow her whole. He told her about his own fears, that he would work his whole life and have nothing to show for it, that he would never find a place where he truly belonged, that he was too rough, too uneducated, too much a product of failed farming to ever be more than hired help. "You are not too anything," she wrote in response. "You are exactly who you should be. And if the world cannot see that, the failing is in the world, not in you." Her words settled into him like warmth after a long winter. By December, Xander found himself thinking about her constantly. Not just during their letter exchanges, but throughout his days. He would be riding fence line and wonder what she was teaching the children. He would be eating dinner with the ranch hands and remember something she had written about her students, about the miner's son who struggled with reading but excelled at mathematics, about the rancher's daughter who wrote poetry in the margins of her slate. He had still never spoken to her in person. In a town as small as Pyramid City, he saw her occasionally, walking to the school or purchasing supplies at the general store, but he kept his distance. Their correspondence felt sacred somehow, separate from the ordinary interactions of daily life. He worried that approaching her in town might shatter whatever it was they were building together in those letters. Christmas approached, and Sarah wrote that she would be staying in Pyramid City for the holiday. "Most of the children are here year-round," she explained, "and I want to organize a small celebration at the school for them. Besides, the journey back to Boston is long and expensive, and I confess I have no desire to return to my parents' house and endure their disappointment in my choices." Xander spent 2 weeks' wages on a gift for her, a leather-bound journal with blank pages, the finest one the general store could order from Santa Fe. He wrapped it carefully and left it with his letter along with a note that said, "For your thoughts, your dreams, and anything else you wish to preserve in these pages." She left him a gift as well, a knitted scarf in deep blue wool, the stitches small and even, clearly the work of many hours. "My mother insisted I learn needlework," she wrote, "though I was never very enthusiastic about it. But I found myself wanting to make something for you, something practical that might keep you warm during your long days on the ranch. I hope you will accept it in the spirit it is given." He wore that scarf every day, even when the temperature did not quite warrant it, and felt her care wrapped around his neck. Winter deepened, and their letters continued. In late January, Sarah wrote something that shifted the tenor of their correspondence entirely. "Xander, I must confess something to you. These letters have become the center of my life in a way I did not anticipate. I find myself living from Sunday to Sunday, measuring my weeks by your words, and I have begun to wonder what you look like when you smile. I have begun to imagine your voice reading these letters aloud. I have begun to wish, with an intensity that startles me, that I might meet you in person, might speak to you face to face, might know you in the full dimension of presence rather than only through written words. Is that too forward of me? Perhaps it is. But we have been honest with each other from the beginning, and I cannot bring myself to be less than honest now. I understand if you prefer to keep our acquaintance as it is. There is safety in letters, in the distance they allow. But if you share any part of this longing, I hope you will tell me. Yours, more truly than you perhaps know, Sarah. Xander's hands shook as he held that letter. His heart pounded so hard he could feel it in his throat. She wanted to meet him. She wanted to know him beyond these pages. The fear came immediately. What if he disappointed her? What if the reality of him, a ranch hand with calloused hands and sun-weathered skin and only a basic education, was not what she hoped for? What if she had built him up in her imagination into something he could never be? But beneath the fear ran something stronger, desire. He wanted to meet her too, desperately. He wanted to hear her voice, see her smile, learn the way she moved through the world. He wanted to know if the connection they had built through letters could translate into something real and tangible. He wrote back immediately. Sarah, I have thought of little else but meeting you since your last letter arrived. Truth be told, I have thought about it since the very first letter I found, but I was afraid. I am still afraid. I am not an educated man, not refined in the ways you are accustomed to. I am a ranch hand who can barely write without making spelling errors, who knows more about cattle and horses than books and culture. But if you are willing to meet me as I am, I would consider it an honor. There is a place about 2 miles west of the creek where the old cottonwood tree grows beside the rock formation that looks like a cathedral. Do you know it? If you are willing, I could meet you there next Saturday afternoon. If not, I understand and we can continue as we have been. Either way, know that these letters have been the greatest gift I have received in my life. Xander, her response came faster than any before. Yes, she wrote simply. Saturday afternoon, the old cottonwood, I will be there. I am nervous and excited and terrified all at once, but yes, absolutely yes. Until Saturday. Sarah. The days until Saturday moved like molasses in winter. Xander worked his ranch duties in a daze, barely hearing the foreman's instructions, nearly falling from his horse while checking the water troughs. At night he lay awake, alternating between anticipation and dread. Saturday dawned clear and cold, the January sky a brilliant blue. Xander finished his morning chores in record time, then returned to his room to clean up. He washed thoroughly, shaved carefully, put on his best shirt and vest. The blue scarf Sarah had made him went around his neck. He looked at himself in the small mirror and saw a man of 25 years, average height, brown hair that would not stay quite neat, hazel eyes that seemed too anxious. Nothing special. Nothing that would impress a woman like Sarah Michaels. But he had promised to meet her, and Xander Cross kept his promises. He rode to the old cottonwood, arriving early and waited beside his horse, his stomach a knot of nerves. The rock formation rose behind him, its unusual spires catching the light in ways that did indeed resemble cathedral towers. The cottonwood stood bare-branched and massive, its trunk wide enough that 3 men could not circle it with linked arms. Then he saw her walking across the winter grass, wrapped in a dark coat, her breath visible in the cold air. His heart seized. She was beautiful. He had known she was handsome from seeing her around town, but up close, walking toward him with purpose and nervousness both evident in her stride, she was breathtaking. Her dark hair was pinned up as always, but loose tendrils framed her face. Her eyes, he saw as she drew closer, were a deep brown that caught the sunlight like polished wood. She stopped a few feet away, and for a long moment they simply looked at each other. "Mr. Cross," she said finally, and her voice was soft and warm and a little breathless. "Miss Michaels," he replied, and his own voice came out rougher than intended. Then she smiled, a real genuine smile that transformed her whole face, and Xander felt something inside him shift and settle, like a lock clicking into place. "I cannot believe I am finally meeting you," she said. "I have imagined this moment so many times." "As have I," he admitted, "and I confess I was terrified you would be disappointed." "Disappointed?" She looked genuinely surprised. "How could I possibly be disappointed? You are exactly as I imagined. No, that is not quite true. You are better. Your letters gave me your heart and mind, but they could not convey your presence. And your presence is very welcome indeed." Relief flooded through him so intensely he felt light-headed. "Would you like to walk?" he offered. "It is cold to stand still." They walked along the base of the rock formation, their steps naturally falling into rhythm. At first, the conversation felt stilted, both of them trying too hard, aware of the strangeness of speaking aloud after months of written words. But gradually, the ease they had found in their letters returned. "Tell me about your students," he said, and she lit up as she described them, her hands gesturing expressively as she talked. He told her about the ranch, about the horses he was training, about the foreman who was teaching him skills that might one day let him manage his own land. The afternoon sun moved across the sky, and they kept walking and talking, and Xander realized with a start that hours had passed. Sarah seemed to notice at the same time. "I should return before dark," she said reluctantly, "but I do not want this day to end." "Nor do I," he said honestly. "Might I walk you back toward town?" "I would like that." They walked slowly, neither wanting to rush the remaining time. As the outskirts of Pyramid City came into view, Xander gathered his courage. "Might I see you again?" he asked. "Not just through letters, though I treasure those as well, but like this, in person." "I was hoping you would ask," Sarah said, and her smile was radiant. "Yes, please, yes." They made plans to meet again the following Saturday, same place and time. When they finally parted ways at the edge of town, Xander's hand brushed against hers, the briefest touch, but it sent electricity racing up his arm. That night he could not sleep for replaying every moment of their meeting. Her smile, her voice, the way she listened with her whole attention when he spoke, the intelligence and kindness in her eyes. Their next meeting came faster than he expected, and this time the awkwardness was entirely gone. They talked easily, laughed freely, and when Sarah stumbled on a loose stone, Xander caught her elbow to steady her, and neither of them pulled away immediately. The meetings became regular. Every Saturday afternoon, and sometimes Sunday mornings after Xander collected their letters from the creek. They continued writing to each other as well, the letters now supplementing their in-person conversations rather than replacing them. In February, Xander worked up the courage to invite Sarah to dinner at the small restaurant in Pyramid City. It was not much, just the dining room of the boarding house where travelers stayed, but it had tablecloths and decent food. Sarah arrived in a dress he had not seen before, deep green that brought out the warmth in her complexion. Xander wore his best clothes and felt acutely aware of how rough his hands looked holding the menu. But Sarah seemed not to notice or care. She smiled at him across the table, and they talked about everything and nothing, and when their hands touched while both reaching for the salt, they let them linger together for a moment. "I need to tell you something," Sarah said as they finished their meal. "My father has written to me. He wants me to return to Boston for the summer. He says I have made my point, proven my independence, and now it is time to come home and fulfill my responsibilities." Xander's stomach dropped. "And will you go?" "I do not want to," she said firmly. "This is my home now. Pyramid City, the school, the children, and you." She said the last part quietly, her eyes meeting his. "Especially you, but my father is not a man who accepts refusal easily. He controls my small inheritance from my grandmother, and he has threatened to withhold it if I do not comply." That money is rightfully yours, Xander said, anger heating his voice. Yes, but legally he has control of it until I marry or turn 30. I am only 23, she sighed. I do not need the money to survive. My teaching salary is enough for my modest needs. But he knows that without it, I could never afford passage back east if I ever changed my mind. He is trying to trap me into compliance. Xander reached across the table and took her hand properly this time, not just a brush of fingers but a real clasp. What do you want to do? I want to stay, she said. I want to continue teaching. I want to continue seeing you. I want to build a life here on my own terms. Then that is what you should do, he said. And whatever you need, whatever help I can offer, it is yours. Her eyes grew bright with unshed tears. You make me feel brave, she whispered. Like I can stand up to him and not crumble. You were brave long before you met me, Xander said. You came all the way to New Mexico territory on your own. You built a life here from nothing. That took more courage than most people ever muster. She squeezed his hand. Walk me home. They walked through the quiet streets of Pyramid City, their hands still linked, and Xander thought he had never been happier than in this moment. When they reached the boarding house where Sarah rented her room, they stood together in the shadow of the front porch. Thank you, Sarah said softly, for everything, for finding my letter, for writing back, for being you. Thank you for writing that letter in the first place, he replied. For being brave enough to send your loneliness out into the world. It found exactly the right person. She looked up at him, and in the pale moonlight her face was luminous. May I ask you something? Anything? Would it be too forward if I said I wanted you to kiss me? Xander's breath caught. Not too forward at all. He leaned down slowly, giving her time to change her mind, but she rose up to meet him halfway. Their lips met softly at first, tentative, learning. Then deeper, surer, and Xander felt like he was falling and flying at the same time. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing harder, Sarah's smile was dazed and delighted. That was worth waiting for, she said. I have wanted to do that since January, he admitted. Only since January. I have wanted it since your first letter. They kissed again, and it was even better the second time. Over the next weeks, their courtship deepened. They were careful in town, aware that people watched and gossiped, but in their private moments they were affectionate and open. Xander met Sarah after school sometimes, carrying her books as she walked home. Sarah visited the Morrison Ranch once, bringing cookies for the hands and winning over even the gruffest of the workers with her genuine interest in their lives. The foreman, a man named Dutch Morrison who had run the ranch since his father died, pulled Xander aside one day. That schoolteacher of yours is quality, he said. You planning to make an honest woman of her? I want to, Xander admitted, but I have nothing to offer her. I make decent wages, but I have no land, no house, no security. You have yourself, Dutch said, and from what I have seen, she values that more than property. But if you are looking to improve your prospects, I have a proposition for you. Xander listened as Dutch explained. The ranch was expanding, and Dutch needed a second manager, someone to oversee the northern pastures and the horse breeding operation Dutch wanted to develop. The job came with a significant raise and a small house on the ranch property. I have been watching you, Dutch said. You work hard, you are smart with the animals, and the men respect you. You are young, but so was I when my father gave me responsibility. I think you can handle this. What do you say? Xander could barely believe it. Yes, he said immediately. Yes, absolutely, thank you. Do not thank me yet. It is hard work and long hours, but it is a step up, and it comes with that house I mentioned. Big enough for a family if you were thinking along those lines. Xander was definitely thinking along those lines. He told Sarah about the promotion that Saturday as they walked beside the creek. Spring was coming, the weather warming, and the cottonwood was starting to bud. "That is wonderful," Sarah exclaimed, hugging him. "You deserve this, Xander. You have worked so hard." "It comes with a house," he said, his heart pounding. "A small one, but solid." "And Sarah, I need to ask you something, and you can say no. You can take all the time you need to think about it, but I cannot wait any longer to ask." She looked up at him, her eyes wide and hopeful. "I love you," he said. "I have loved you since your letters taught me that someone could know the deepest parts of me and not turn away. I love your courage and your kindness and your brilliant mind. I love the way you care for your students and the way you make me want to be a better man. I do not have much to offer you, not yet, but I have a job I am good at and a house that could be a home and a heart that is entirely yours if you want it. Sarah Michaels, will you marry me?" Tears spilled down her cheeks, but she was smiling, radiant and beautiful in his. "Yes," she said. "Yes, Xander. Absolutely yes. I love you too. I have loved you for months, and yes, I will marry you." He kissed her there beside the creek where their story had begun, and it felt like every piece of his life was finally falling into place. They were married in April of 1883 in the small church in Pyramid City, with half the town in attendance. Sarah wore a simple white dress she had sewn herself, and Xander wore his best suit purchased specially for the occasion. Sarah's students scattered wildflowers as she walked down the aisle, and when Xander saw her coming toward him, he had to blink back tears. The ceremony was simple and beautiful. They spoke their vows clearly, looking into each other's eyes, and when the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, the whole church erupted in applause. The reception was held at the school, with food contributed by families throughout the community. Dutch Morrison gave a toast that made everyone laugh and cry, saying he had never seen a man work harder to be worthy of a woman, though anyone with eyes could see Xander had been worthy all along. As the sun set and the party wound down, Xander and Sarah rode out to their new home on the Morrison Ranch. It was small, just 3 rooms, but Sarah had spent the past weeks making it cozy with curtains and rugs and small touches that made it feel like home. "I cannot believe this is ours," she said, standing in the middle of the main room, turning in a slow circle. "A real home belonging to us." "Believe it," Xander said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "You are stuck with me now, Mrs. Cross." She turned in his arms, looping her hands behind his neck. "I cannot imagine anywhere else I would rather be stuck." That night they came together as husband and wife, tentative at first, then with growing confidence and joy. Xander had worried about his inexperience, but Sarah was patient and loving, and together they learned the language of each other's bodies, the ways to bring pleasure and comfort and connection. Afterward, lying tangled together in the darkness, Sarah said, "I need to tell you something." "What is it?" "I wrote to my father. I told him I was getting married and that I would not be returning to Boston except perhaps to visit someday. I told him I was happy and fulfilled and building a good life. I told him I hoped he could be happy for me, but that his approval was no longer required for me to know my own worth." "How do you feel about that?" Xander asked. "Terrified," she admitted, "but also free. For the first time in my life, I am not waiting for his permission to be myself." "I am proud of you," he said, kissing her forehead. "That took real courage." "I had a good teacher in courage," she said. "A cowboy who wrote me letters and showed me what it means to be truly seen." Life settled into a beautiful rhythm. Xander thrived in his new role at the ranch, managing the northern pastures and building up the horse breeding program with dedication and skill. Sarah continued teaching, beloved by her students and respected throughout the community. Their evenings were spent together in their small home, cooking dinner, talking about their days, reading by lamplight. Sometimes, Xander would find Sarah writing in the journal he had given her for Christmas, and she would smile and read him passages about her thoughts and dreams. Sometimes she would find him sitting on the porch at sunset, just watching the land, and she would join him in comfortable silence. They still wrote each other letters occasionally, little notes left where the other would find them, continuing the tradition that had brought them together. Xander might find a letter in his saddlebag telling him how much Sarah loved watching him work with the horses. Sarah might find a note tucked into her lesson book telling her how proud he was of the difference she made in children's lives. In the fall of 1883, Sarah realized she was pregnant. She told Xander one evening over dinner, simply and directly, watching his face for his reaction. His expression cycled through surprise, then joy, then concern. "Are you happy about this?" he asked. "So happy," she said. "Are you?" "Terrified and thrilled in equal measure," he admitted. "I know nothing about being a father. And I know nothing about being a mother. We will figure it out together." The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Sarah continued teaching until Christmas, then took leave to prepare for the baby's arrival. The community rallied around them, the ranch hands building a cradle, the miners' wives bringing baby clothes and advice. In early April of 1884, almost exactly 1 year after their wedding, Sarah gave birth to a healthy baby boy. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Xander, pacing outside the bedroom while the midwife worked, thought he might lose his mind with worry. But finally, the thin wail of a newborn cut through the house, and the midwife emerged with a smile. "You have a son," she said. "Mother and baby are both well." Xander rushed into the bedroom. Sarah lay exhausted against the pillows, her hair damp with sweat, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in blankets. She looked up at him with a tired, radiant smile. "Meet your son," she said. Xander carefully took the baby, overwhelmed by how small he was, how perfect. Tiny fingers, tiny toes, a shock of dark hair. "He is beautiful," he breathed. "What should we name him?" Sarah asked. They had discussed names but never settled on anything definite. Now, looking at his son's face, Xander thought of his own father, a good man who had worked himself to exhaustion trying to save a failing farm, who had wanted better for his children. "William," he said, "after my father, if that suits you." "William Cross," Sarah said, testing the name. "I like it. Welcome to the world, William." Fatherhood transformed Xander in ways he had not expected. He was amazed by how much he could love this tiny person, how every small smile or sound filled his chest with warmth. He learned to change diapers and soothe crying and walk the floor at night when William was fussy. He learned that exhaustion could coexist with perfect happiness. Sarah proved to be a natural mother, patient and loving but also practical. She nursed William while reading books or correcting lessons, efficiently managing both motherhood and her continued involvement with the school, though she did not return to daily teaching. As William grew from infant to toddler, he became the center of their lives without diminishing their love for each other. If anything, Xander loved Sarah more for seeing her with their son, for the gentleness she showed while also maintaining the strength and independence he had always admired. And Sarah loved Xander more for the tenderness he showed their boy, for the way he talked to William like a person even when he was too young to understand, for the patience he demonstrated teaching their son about horses and cattle and the land. The Morrison Ranch continued to prosper, and Xander's reputation as a horseman grew. People came from surrounding territories to purchase horses trained by Xander Cross, and Dutch gave him a percentage of the profits in addition to his salary. They were not wealthy, but they were comfortable, and more importantly, they were happy. In the summer of 1886, Sarah discovered she was pregnant again. William was just over 2 years old, an energetic toddler with his mother's dark hair and his father's hazel eyes. This pregnancy was easier than the first, and Sarah sailed through it with energy to spare. Their daughter was born in February of 1887, arriving quickly and with much less drama than William's birth. They named her Emma, after Sarah's grandmother, the one who had left her the inheritance that Sarah's father still controlled. It felt like honoring the woman who had tried to give Sarah independence, even if the gift was currently being withheld. Emma was a calm baby, content to watch the world with serious eyes. William was fascinated by his little sister, wanting to help with everything, and Xander often found himself managing a toddler who was trying to assist with diaper changes or bottle feeding. Their house felt full and warm and alive. Most evenings found them all together, Xander and Sarah taking turns reading to William while Emma nursed or slept, the lamp burning low, the fire crackling, the wind whistling outside their sturdy walls. In 1888, Sarah received a letter from Boston. Her father had died suddenly of a heart condition. The letter was from his lawyer, informing her that despite their estrangement, her father's will left everything to her. The house, the bank accounts, the investments. It was a substantial sum. Sarah read the letter aloud to Xander, her voice shaking slightly. When she finished, she set it down and looked at him. "I do not know how to feel," she said. "He withheld my grandmother's inheritance to try to control me, but in the end he left me everything. Was it guilt, regret, love he could not express while living? Perhaps all of those things," Xander said. "People are complicated." "I never wanted his money," Sarah said. "I wanted his respect, his approval of my choices, but he could not give me that while he lived. What do you want to do?" She thought for a long moment. "I want to use it to do good. Set up a fund for the school to ensure teachers are paid fairly and students have books and supplies. Perhaps expand the school building. And I want to save some for our children's future so they have choices we did not have." "That sounds exactly right," Xander said. They traveled to Boston that summer, the whole family, so Sarah could settle her father's affairs. It was strange for Xander to see the world Sarah had come from, the elegant brownstone house, the servants, the social circles. It was even stranger to see Sarah in that context, wearing fine dresses and navigating society events with practiced ease, a version of her he had never witnessed. But every night, back in the guest room of her childhood home, she would change into her simple nightgown and curl up beside him and whisper, "I cannot wait to go home." They returned to Pyramid City in September, and it felt like releasing a held breath. This was home. The wide skies, the ranch, their small house that now held the deed in their name, purchased with part of Sarah's inheritance. The children ran through the rooms, delighted to be back in familiar territory, and Sarah smiled at Xander across the chaos. "This is where I belong," she said. The years passed in a rhythm of seasons and growth. William started school under his mother's watchful eye, though Sarah had arranged for another teacher to handle daily instruction to avoid any appearance of favoritism. Emma followed when she turned 5, shy at first but blossoming under the structure and social interaction. In 1890, Sarah gave birth to their third child, another son they named Thomas. He was a cheerful baby who rarely cried and seemed content with whatever was happening around him. William and Emma doted on him, and the house rang with children's laughter. Xander continued to build the horse program, and in 1892, Dutch Morrison made him a full partner in the ranch. It was a significant moment, the son of a failed Missouri farmer now part owner of one of the most successful ranches in New Mexico territory. "You earned this," Dutch said when Xander tried to express his gratitude. "You built this program into something special. You deserve to share in its success." That night, Xander held Sarah close and marveled at how far they had come. From lonely letters in bottles to a full, rich life surrounded by family and purpose and love, the children grew. William showed an aptitude for working with animals like his father, spending hours at the stables learning everything Xander could teach him. Emma proved to be academically gifted like her mother, reading far above her grade level and showing a talent for writing. Thomas was still young, but displayed a sunny personality that made everyone around him smile. In 1895, Sarah was approached about becoming the principal of the school, which had expanded significantly with funding from her father's inheritance. She hesitated, worried about the time commitment with 3 children at home, but Xander encouraged her. "You would be brilliant at it," he said, "and the children are all in school now. If you want this, take it." She took it and thrived. Under her leadership, the school became one of the best in the territory, attracting families to Pyramid City specifically for the quality of education. The turn of the century found them prosperous and content. Xander was 43, Sarah 41, with William now 16, Emma 13, and Thomas 10. They had weathered droughts and hard winters, economic downturns and personal challenges, and emerged stronger each time. One evening in the spring of 1901, Xander and Sarah walked down to the creek, the same one where their story had begun nearly 20 years earlier. The children were old enough now to be left alone for a while, and they treasured these moments of solitude together. "Do you ever think about that letter?" Xander asked, standing at the spot where he had found the bottle. "Often," Sarah said. "I think about how lonely I was, how desperate I felt, and how impossible it seemed that anyone would understand. And now I have a life richer than I ever imagined possible. A husband I love deeply, children who bring me joy every day, work that fulfills me, and a community I am proud to be part of." She leaned against him. "All because I was brave enough to write down my loneliness and send it into the world." "All because I was lucky enough to find it," Xander said. "Not luck," Sarah corrected. "Fate. We were meant to find each other." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the water flow over stones, the same water that had carried her message to him all those years ago. "I love you," Xander said, "more now than even on the day we married." "And I love you," Sarah replied, "more than all the words in all the letters we ever wrote could express." They kissed there beside the creek, 2 people who had found each other through honesty and courage and the willingness to be vulnerable. 2 people who had built a life worth living together. As they walked back to their home, hands linked, the sunset painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Xander thought about the young man he had been, riding through this creek bed in search of a lost calf, finding instead a bottle with a message. He had been lonely then too, though he had not named it that way. He had been searching for something without knowing what, and he had found it. Not just in Sarah, though she was the center of it, but in the life they had created together. In their children, in their work, in the community they were part of, in the home they had made. Sarah had been closer than he thought, just a few miles away in Pyramid City, walking past that creek every day. But the distance between them had been more than physical. It had been the distance of 2 people alone in their loneliness, not knowing they were seeking the same thing. The letters had bridged that distance. Honesty had bridged it. Courage had bridged it. And love had made it permanent. Years continued to unfold. William married in 1903, a rancher's daughter named Claire who shared his love of horses. They built a house on Morrison Ranch land and started their own family, giving Xander and Sarah their first grandchild in 1904, a girl named Sarah after her grandmother. Emma left for college in the East in 1905, determined to study literature and writing. She wrote long letters home describing her experiences, and Xander smiled at the parallel to his own letter writing courtship with her mother. Emma returned after graduation and became a teacher like Sarah, eventually taking over as principal when Sarah retired. Thomas discovered a talent for business and eventually helped expand the Morrison Ranch operations into new territories, ensuring the family's prosperity for generations to come. Through it all, Xander and Sarah remained the foundation of their family, the love story that had started with a letter in a bottle becoming the stuff of family legend. Their grandchildren would beg to hear the story again and again, and Sarah would tell it, her eyes finding Xander's across the room, the connection between them as strong as ever. In 1910, they celebrated their 27th wedding anniversary with a renewal of vows. All 3 children and 5 grandchildren attended, along with friends from across New Mexico. They stood in the same church where they had married, older now but still clearly in love, and spoke the same promises they had made so many years before. Later that night, alone in their bedroom, Sarah pulled out the original letters they had written to each other, carefully preserved in a wooden box. They read through them together, marveling at their younger selves, at the loneliness and hope that had driven them to such honesty. "We were so young," Sarah said, "and so lost," Xander added, "but we found each other." "We did indeed." They made love that night with the tenderness of long familiarity, knowing every way to please and comfort each other, their bodies fitting together like puzzle pieces worn smooth by time. As Xander drifted toward sleep, Sarah curled against his side. He thought about the strange grace of their story. How easy it would have been to never find that bottle, to ride past it unseeing. How easy it would have been to read the letter and dismiss it, or to never write back, or to let fear prevent their first meeting. But none of those things had happened. Instead, step by step, choice by choice, they had found their way to each other and built something beautiful. The creek still flowed past the Morrison Ranch, water moving over stone, carrying leaves and twigs, and occasionally, when the light caught it just right, reflecting the sky like a mirror. Xander and Sarah walked beside it often, even as they aged, even as their steps grew slower and their hair turned gray. They never put another letter in a bottle. They did not need to. The loneliness that had driven Sarah to write that first desperate message was long gone, replaced by a fullness of connection and love that sustained them both. In 1918, as the world beyond Pyramid City changed with war and progress, Xander and Sarah celebrated their 35th anniversary quietly at home. Their children were all married with families of their own. The ranch was thriving under Thomas's management, and William's continued expertise with horses. Emma's school was considered one of the finest in the state, New Mexico, having achieved statehood in 1912. They sat together on their porch, the same one where Xander had proposed so many years ago, watching the sunset paint the sky. "You have any regrets?" Sarah asked. Xander thought about it seriously. "Only that I wish I had more time. This life with you, it has been everything. And still, I want more of it. More sunsets, more conversations, more of your hand in mine." "That is not really a regret then," Sarah said. "That is gratitude for what we have had and greed for wanting it to continue. What about you? Any regrets?" "None," she said firmly. "Except perhaps that I waited so long to write that letter. We could have had even more time together if I had been braver sooner." "You were brave exactly when you needed to be," Xander said. "And I found your letter exactly when I was ready to receive it. The timing was perfect." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the land in shades of purple and gold. Inside the house, they could hear their youngest grandson playing, visiting for the week with his parents. The sound of a child's laughter, the warmth of Sarah's hand in his, the peace of a life well lived. This was what happiness looked like, Xander thought. Not grand gestures or dramatic moments, though they had had their share of those. But this, quiet evenings, shared memories, a love that had deepened with every passing year. "I would do it all again," Sarah said suddenly. "Every moment, every choice, every challenge, all of it exactly the same because it led me here. To you, to this life we built together." "As would I," Xander agreed. "Finding your letter was the greatest fortune of my life." They stayed on the porch until the stars emerged, talking and remembering, laughing over old stories and marveling at how far they had come. When they finally went inside, Xander helped Sarah up the stairs, his joints protesting the movement, both of them moving slower than they once had. But in their bedroom, Sarah looked at him with the same love he had seen in her eyes on their wedding night, and Xander felt young again. Age was just a number. What mattered was this connection, this love that had sustained them through nearly 4 decades. They lived many more years, watching their grandchildren grow, welcoming great-grandchildren into the world. The Morrison Ranch continued to prosper, the school continued to educate, and Pyramid City grew from a rough frontier town into an established community. Through it all, Xander and Sarah remained devoted to each other, their love story inspiring everyone who knew them. They held hands at church, kissed in the kitchen when they thought no one was watching, and could often be found walking by the creek where their story had begun. When Xander died in 1925 at the age of 68, peacefully in his sleep, Sarah grieved deeply but without bitterness. They had been married 42 years, and not one of those years had been wasted. She had loved him fully and been fully loved in return. She lived another 7 years, surrounded by family, still active in the community, still teaching occasionally when the school needed her. And when she died in 1932 at the age of 72, her children found something tucked into her jewelry box, a worn glass bottle, and inside it, the very first letter Xander had ever written to her. They buried it with her, along with Xander's first letter to her and the original letter she had written that started everything. The family agreed it was fitting. Those letters had brought 2 lonely souls together and created a love story that had rippled out through generations. The house on the Morrison Ranch still stood, lived in now by great-grandchildren. The school Sarah had led was named in her honor. The creek still flowed past the old cottonwood tree. And the story of the lonely schoolteacher who sent her heart into the world in a bottle, and the cowboy who found it and loved her for the rest of their lives, became the story that was told at family gatherings, at weddings, at celebrations. It became a story about courage and vulnerability, about taking the risk to be known, about the strange and beautiful ways that love can find us when we are brave enough to ask for it. And somewhere in that creek, in the flow of water over stone, in the play of sunlight on glass, the spirit of their love remained, a testament to what can grow from a single act of desperate honesty, from one person brave enough to reach out, and another person kind enough to reach back. Their great-great-grandchildren still lived in Pyramid City, still worked the Morrison Ranch, still taught at the school. The legacy of Xander and Sarah Cross lived on, not just in genetics or property, but in the values they had embodied. Honesty, courage, love, and the belief that even in the loneliest moments, connection is possible if we are brave enough to seek it. The Wild West that had been their backdrop was gone, transformed by time and progress into something new. But the truths they had discovered remained eternal. That loneliness acknowledged is the first step toward connection. That vulnerability is not weakness but strength. That love, when it finds us, is worth every risk we take to claim it. And that sometimes the person we are searching for is closer than we think. Just a few miles away, walking past the same creek, feeling the same loneliness, waiting for someone brave enough to reach out and say, "I see you. I know you. I am here." That was the legacy of Xander and Sarah Cross. Not just a love story, but a testament to the power of being seen, being known, and being loved for exactly who you are. And in a small cemetery on a hill overlooking Pyramid City, two headstones stood side by side, the inscription simple: Xander Cross, beloved husband and father, and Sarah Michaels Cross, beloved wife and mother. But between them, carved into a shared stone base, were words that told their real story. Two souls, one love forever. The end.